Welcome back to another edition of No Stoplights. Want to make sure we thank our sponsors once again, Micky Finn's, Marlboro MPD Electric Co-op, Schofield's, Carolina Bank, Pepsi of Florence. I'm going to do something today, if you don't mind. We're going to be a bit redundant. We dropped a podcast Tuesday about the Dominion Fox News case. We'll since then, it's our luck to drop a podcast about something that is resolved the following day. So you got a Tuesday drop of a podcast. You got a Thursday drop of a podcast. It's just our luck that on Wednesday, Fox and Dominion decided to settle a lawsuit. So here we are, really on a Tuesday afternoon. That would have been, let's get this chronologically correct. So we record a podcast on Monday. It drops on Tuesday. Tuesday afternoon, Fox and Dominion make a deal. They come to some resolution. They settle the $1.6 billion lawsuit, and then we normally record a Thursday podcast on Wednesday. So between the podcast we dropped Tuesday and the recording of the podcast that will be dropped now, because you're watching or listening, I'm live and in living color, the Dominion Fox case has been settled. There will not be a trial. There will not be I guess they've been deposed. There will not be an appearance of Tucker Carlson, of Laura Ingraham, of Rupert Murdoch, or any of the Murdoch clan as it relates to the events that have transpired, once again, chronologically correct, since the Tuesday drop of No Stoplights. So we're dropping this Thursday. Fox and Dominion have made a deal. What does it say in totality, of the grand scheme of things? What have we learned? What has been gathered? Where do we land, so to speak, when it comes to Fox News agreeing to pay $787.5 million? I mean, when you really think about it, I looked at some of the market caps of Dominion voting machines. They're getting about 10 times what the business is worth. The market cap of the business is somewhere around between 75 and $100 million. They're getting an extra infusion of cash, 787.5. I don't have any idea if it's a structured payout. I don't have any idea. We've read multiple reports of insurance funds going toward the settlement, the buyout. But I want to stay clear of the financials of this. $1.6 billion turns into $787.5 million. When do they get the money? I don't know. How much of the money comes from the coffers? I think Fox News got about $4 billion in cash on hand per their financial disclosures. They're getting off a certain percentage of that, or a certain amount of that. But I want to go to the nature of Fox News. There's no denying this, and I want to involve a co-host and producer here, Dave Baker, more than I normally do. I like the bright lights, and I like the spotlight, and I like to have my opinion heard more than anybody else's. But I want to bring Dave in this morning.
I can confirm.
Well, you would be more of a consumer of Fox News than I am, and it's a little bit like. I'm trying to think of an example.
Well, give your opinion of Fox News, something you've been talking about on the radio show for a while, as it relates to being a credible news organization.
I'm not saying they're uncredible. I'm not. I just think Fox has decided it's much more lucrative to be in the entertainment business. Do I believe they have the capacity to do news? Yes. But in today's world, division and conflict are lucrative. Correct? You would agree to that.
It sells.
We do talk radio in the mornings. We're doing a podcast. We're not in the hard news business. There will always be a place, and I think democracy is better served when we have people doing hard news, journalists doing the job of a journalist. That is really the death of journalism. If you want to talk about some of the problems in American politics today, it probably is the death of legitimate journalism. An unbiased reporter trying to find out exactly what your government is up to or not. But the folks that have made the biggest splash in media recently in the world of politics have been opinion monsters. I would be an opinion monster. Rev, I think I have the ability to go find the facts. You said something interesting to me earlier, that you feel as a consumer of Fox News, you have the ability to discern when they're honestly trying to be newsworthy and when they're in the entertainment business.
I do. That is my responsibility.
You're okay. Is that your responsibility? That would be the question that I ask of you. Do you believe it's your responsibility to discern whether Fox News is trying to legitimately report news, or MSNBC or CNN or CBS or ABC? Look, newsflash. Ready? Full disclosure. Fox ain't the only SOBs doing this. I mean, let's get that legitimately clear. They have been called to the carpet. They made a bad decision. So let's break the decision down. What did Fox News do that allowed Dominion to collect $787.5 million? Fox allowed two people in particular on multiple occasions, somewhere between 19 and 22 times, Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani said things about Dominion that weren't true. And Fox knew they weren't true. That's the caveat here. That's where the lawsuit really hinged on. It's not that somebody came on Fox News and said something that's not true. But that happens every day.
Yeah, when you invite a guest on, you're asking a guest to give their opinion. In this case, those lawyers were working for President Trump.
Correct.
Right? And they were giving, and I don't know whether they believed it at the time or not. I don't really know that. Nobody probably knows that. But they were interviewed on Fox. They were guests that were allowed to state their opinion on what happened.
Their opinion is fact. I mean, would you agree to that?
Well, yeah, when you say it as an attorney.
No, what I'm saying is, okay, on the morning radio show that you and I do together, how many times have I said, it is my opinion that this is the truth? I don't know what the truth is in every encounter. I mean, I don't. There's no way I can be 100% true or sure that what I've heard or what I've read is true. But if we know something to be false, we're not going to repeat it. If we know something to be inaccurate, we're not going to put on no stoplights. I mean, we're just not going to do that. If someone said, hey, I'd love to be a guest on your podcast, I'd love to have you as a guest on our podcast, here's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the sheriff and his 9 DUIs. Well, the first thing you and I would do is say, hey, dude, you got to prove that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Really?
you can't come on this podcast and simply say those sorts of things. But once you've established that there is no credible evidence that shows you're telling the truth. Now, in some ways, Fox got it right. I mean, in the weirdest way imaginable, Tucker Carlson. I mean, you go to some of the internal communications between executives at Fox, some of the leading pundits, personalities at Fox, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, both said Sidney Powell's lying. I mean, she's not telling the truth, and I'm not letting her back on this show until we have evidentiary proof that she's telling the truth. So, Fox is not settling a lawsuit because somebody stated a misfact, or somebody said something was factual and it was found out to not to be the case. That happens every day. I mean, the Wall Street Journal retracts. The New York Times retracts. CBS News corrects. ABC News corrects. We have apologized for things we've gotten wrong over the years we've been on the radio, and now in this digital space called podcasting. Nobody gets it right every time. I mean, that's virtually impossible. You're a human. I'm a human. Sometimes I want to believe something so bad that I'm blinded by that burning desire to want it to be this way. But Fox didn't stop there. Fox continued to allow this person or these people to come on the airwaves, the powerful airwaves of one of the media giants in the world. I mean, really and truly, if you listed who moves the meter, most in American politics today, even liberal America would argue Fox News does. I mean, there's a reason you can't talk to a liberal for 5 minutes without them bringing up the name Fox News. It is a titan in the world of political media. But a lot of people are saying, well, why can Fox News get in all this trouble and have to settle this the biggest defamation case in American media history? I mean, I think before this, it was $177 million that the Disney company, the parent of ABC, settled in this pink slime story with some food company. And then they, in a defamatory way, damaged the value of the business, the reputation of the business. So now Fox has the biggest defamation settlement in the history of the American political media. But a lot of conversations I've heard are, well, that's what they get for saying things that aren't true. That's not what they paid for. guess what? Somebody will say something on Fox News today and tomorrow and the next day that aren't true. Somebody will say something on MSNBC today, tomorrow and the next day that isn't true. What Fox got in trouble for is once they knew that what Giuliani and Sidney Powell were saying weren't true, they continued to allow them on for fear of losing their audience. There was an internal email between Fox executives that I can't quote it exactly, but it was basically, hey, this new Max ratings spike is troubling and concerning and can't be dismissed. So Fox said, we don't have any. I mean, who's in the office when the two big shots at Fox get together and say, hey, man, if we don't let Powell and Giuliani come on, they're going on Newsmax. Trump's got a big universe of supporters. We know how loyal they are, and we can't take that chance. What they basically did, surprise, is place revenue ahead of reputation. I mean, imagine that. Imagine in America today, a business saying, hey, I'd rather have the revenue. I'll take my chances with my reputation. Where do we go from here? I mean, what happens now? Because there are going to be a lot of stories out there. You won't see it in the mainstream media. If MSNBC, let's use the let's for argument's sake say Fox News is a conservative media outlet. I mean, I've always debated whether they're news or not. You know, I've been pretty consistent in arguing they aren't a news network. Do they have the ability? Is Brett Baer a journalist? Yeah. Is Bill Hemmer a journalist? Yeah. The majority of viewers tuned in to see whom? Brett Baer or Tucker Carlson?
Tucker.
Or Jesse Waters?
Jesse.
Or Sean Hannity? Or Laura Ingraham? I mean, we know what the ratings show. The 6 o'clock journalism on Fox News gets 1 million viewers, maybe 1.5 million. Some of the opinion and punditry, they get 3 and 4 and 5, and at times 6 million, and some of the hotly contested political periods. But let's argue for a second. Let's paint a hypothetical. What's done is done with Fox. I mean, you agree with me that Fox made a monumental mistake, and they're paying the largest price ever in a defamation case for that mistake they made.
Obviously.
You agree with the accuracy of that statement?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The proof's in the bank.
The proof's in the bank. No question about it. If Fox didn't think they'd done anything wrong, they've got the wherewithal to see this to the end. It wouldn't be like you or I. I mean, if you or I in a big argument with let's say you and I were being sued by Fox News. I mean, they can money whip us. You and I would have to throw the towel in. I mean, unless the American Civil Liberties Union or somebody like, well, they wouldn't do that because we're conservatives.
Right.
But somebody like that would have to come to our aid and assist us because Fox could money whip us. I mean, they could pay a team of lawyers a lot longer than you and I could. But so you can't say that Fox didn't want the trial. I mean, I don't think they wanted the trial because I don't think they wanted Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity and top executives at Fox taking the witness stand saying, yeah, we knew they were lying, but we did it anyway. I mean, that's just, in all honesty, they probably made a pretty shrewd and smart business decision, but it's still $587.5 million nonetheless. So let's go to a hypothetical. Stick with me for a second because I tried to play this out this morning. So let's say that someone from Pfizer comes on CNBC and says the vaccine works. The vaccine stops you from getting COVID. And let's say the people at CNBC who are in the financial pornography business, let's say that they have that person on again and again and again and again. And there are representatives from Pfizer. There's a CEO from Pfizer. There are investment firms, BlackRock comes to mind, that have a financial interest in Pfizer. And we do a summation after the fact. And let's say the Congressional Investigatory Committee comes along and says, we were terribly misled about the efficacy of the vaccine. The effectiveness of the vaccine aren't the same. Efficacy and effectiveness are two sound a lot alike, but they aren't the same thing. So does CNBC accept a similar responsibility to Fox in allowing someone to come on? We know what they were motivated by, right? I mean, you would agree. I think you said yes, Rev, that you believe Fox was motivated to allow them to come say things knowing they weren't true because it would have been bad for business not to let them on.
Right.
I mean,
they were giving the audience something they wanted to hear.
You better believe it. I mean, don't. I got a buddy of mine in the restaurant business. He says, man, I'd love to cook, grilled scallops and prime rib, but I make a lot more money cooking chicken fingers and French fries. I don't cook what I want people to eat. I cook what they want to eat. So, yeah, I mean, Fox News was serving up a big old heaping and helping of what they knew their audience wanted to hear, that Donald Trump had gotten cheated out of the 2020 election. Now, and this is another debate. I believe that Donald Trump should have argued from a perspective about the 2020 election, not about Dominion voting machines, not about Hugo Chavez being a co-founder of the business, not about some of the almost unprovable software analogies. In other words, they were arguing that there was a distorted algorithm that counted Democrat votes at a higher percentage or to a higher degree, in kind of a weighted system, that if you voted for a Democrat, you got 1.095. I mean, I'm making that number up. I have no idea what the accusations were. If you vote for the Republican, you're getting 0.97 of a vote. And over the long haul, 330 million Americans, 81 and 75, 156 or 8 million ballots cast, that's a big deal. I mean, if one side is getting 9/10 of a vote counted, the other's getting 1.1, I mean, that's a big deal. But I believe that those who believe something happened in 2020 in the presidential cycle that can't be quite explained, and by that I mean you start with Joe Biden getting 81 million votes. Donald Trump increased from 16 to 20 more than any American incumbent president ever has, and he still lost by 6 million. The fatal mistake the Trump team made, in my humble opinion, is when they argued that the election was stolen, right? I mean, that's the argument. The election was stolen. That they began kind of highlighting and making as part, really the central part of their argument, the machines, the Dominion voting machines. Once again, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani were employed by who? Donald Trump, whom may be grammatically correct. They were employed by whom? Donald Trump. So Powell and Giuliani have the authority to go on and say the election was stolen, go on Fox News, but why not, instead of saying the Dominion machines the algorithms were skewed, the algorithms had been manipulated to favor Joe Biden over Donald Trump, why not begin talking about statistical anomalies and the private financing of campaigns and ballot harvesting and some of the shenanigans that happened in Philadelphia, some of the things that happened in Fulton and Gwinnett County, Maricopa County in Arizona. Those are much more believable. And they're to me, they're less suspect to a defamation case. I mean, when you start taking the reputation of a private enterprise and without any proof whatsoever, knowingly and willingly argue that they're not doing a fair, I mean, this is the company the states hired to count the ballots, right? The Dominion voting machine. I mean, they tabulate the ballots. I would imagine they're human oversight, but you got to be careful when you go down that road. And I think I think Fox made the monumental mistake, but I think the Trump team made a terrible decision. When you're going to argue the election was stolen, you would have had a much better case to make and a more convincing case to make if you'd really broken down. If you go on Tucker Carlson's show and you talk about the percentage of seniors in senior homes in Wisconsin that have historically voted and the percentage that voted in 2020. Some of the heavily Democrat precincts that Mark Zuckerberg invested heavily in. Remember the Zuck Bucks? $450 million of private money going to voter turnout efforts in heavily Democratic precincts. I just believe that's where the hay was to be made. And I think if you're going to argue the election was stolen, you would have been much better leaving the Dominion voting machines alone, let that speak for itself. But because how in the hell are you going to prove some algorithm? Who can do that? I mean, if you and I were allowed in the room when they're tearing those computers apart, you would understand it to some degree. I wouldn't have a clue. I mean, I couldn't begin to fathom. But if you show me on a spreadsheet that 74% of all seniors in senior homes in Wisconsin historically vote, and in 2020 it was 98, I mean, I'm scratching my head. When you tell me that in states like Georgia, states like Pennsylvania, states like Wisconsin, we began changing the laws concerning chain of custody, signature verification. I mean, those are, I mean, you're right. It's circumstantial evidence. But it's very compelling circumstantial evidence. I've always argued if there's a dead man in an alley and there's only two people standing there, one's Mother Teresa, one's Charles Manson, who do you think killed the person? I mean, you didn't see anything happen, but you got Charles Manson, you got Mother Teresa as a dead man. My money's on Charles Manson. So the circumstantial evidence of the statistical anomalies combined with the, some of the executive and legislative changes regarding chain of custody, regarding signature verifications, it was ripe for the pick. I mean, it really and truly, there was a narrative there to be told that I think was far more compelling than what Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani did. And look, we can love Trump, hate Trump, but nobody believes Trump's not in charge. Nobody believes for a second that Sidney Powell went out and said what she wanted to say, or Rudy Giuliani went out and said what he wanted to say. You know damn well that they were saying what Trump wanted said. So the biggest loser in all of this is Fox News. There is no doubt about it. They'll take some sort of reputational hit. Not with me. I mean, personally, I don't look at Fox News any different today than I did yesterday.
I wanted to ask you that question. Do they deserve to take a hit to their reputation with their loyal viewers? Should somebody like me look at them differently?
But you've already said that someone like you discerns when they're playing politics and when they aren't.
Well, sure.
But you're not, I mean, you're not a normal guy. You host a political radio show. You produce a political radio show. I mean, you hear me run my mouth for 20 hours a week about the nature and world of politics. The majority of people are watching Seinfeld. And when the majority of people hear on the street, at work, at a ball game, at a tailgate, at the beach, drinking a beer, when they hear that the election of 2020 was stolen, and now they're going to hear, well, Fox News had to pay $587.5 million because they tried to say the election was stolen, the Seinfeld viewer is going to say, bad day for Fox, but a really bad day for Trump and those who believe the election was stolen. That's my problem. I mean, it's not that I've ever trusted Fox to tell me the truth. I don't. But I'm a cynic by nature. I don't trust MSNBC any more than I trust Fox, any less than I trust Fox. Fox tells me what I want to hear. MSNBC tells me what I disagree with. CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS. The nature of journalism has changed because, once again, conflict and opinion are far more lucrative than hard news. And we could go forever today about when that happened. I think it's Woodward and Bernstein. All the president's men and taking down the president. They became rock stars. They end up with a house at the Hamptons. And the beat reporter, with the cubicle at the Washington Post, life is miserable. I mean, they're covering the city council meeting at 7:00 on a Tuesday night. And Woodward and Bernstein kind of, they became celebrities as journalists. But I still want to go back to the other, and then we'll get out of here. I still want to go back to the other issue. So Fox is liable. I mean, they defamed a private enterprise. They're paying a huge price, a disproportional price. But it's not what Dominion is worth. I think the judge basically said, what amount makes, I mean, what does it give till you hurt? I mean, the church says that. Some athletic booster clubs say that. If I had to give $1 million, it'd be a lot different than Elon Musk having to give $1 million. So it's not what Dominion was worth. It's what Fox had to give. And I think $1.6 billion would have been unbelievably difficult. They got $4 billion cash on hand. They've got the money. Insurance will cover some of this. But, I think Fox's annual sales are $570 or $80 or $90 million. I think that was their number last year. So basically gave up a year. Is it profit or revenue? Anyway, one or the other. It's about a year's worth of earnings. But I want to go back before we get out of here. I want to go back to this other. So Dominion had standing. I mean, there's no doubt they had standing. They had been financially harmed by Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani being allowed to say things that weren't true or couldn't be proven to be true. Who sues MSNBC? Who sues CBS? Who sues CNBC for the number of times and the number of people who were allowed to say the vaccine works when they knew it didn't? I mean, are there emails? Are there internal communications between the Dr. Fauci's of the world, the CDC, the World Health Organization, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, BlackRock, they all had enormous amounts of money in play. They were financially interested in can we demand of people to get the vaccines or not? Okay, I'll tell you what makes us standing. Let's say you're a member of the military and you refuse to get a shot for whatever. I mean, it might have been a religious reason, might have been a personal preference, but you gave up a military career because you refused to do what the government was demanding of people. You've got standing. I mean, to me, you would, right? I mean, they're telling...
you were harmed.
Well, I mean, you were financially harmed. No question about it. Not to the extent the Dominion was, but you gave up a military career or another career. Let's say you're a college professor. And for whatever reason, you didn't trust the science. You thought we fast-tracked it. You had some religious exemption that you wanted to plead. You didn't get your way. You lost your job because you refused to get vaccinated. And all of a sudden, we find out a couple of years later that the science was a lot shakier than we ever imagined. And the vaccine was nowhere near as effective as we were told it was. Now Fox has admitted by settling that they lied. Correct? I mean, you're a Fox fan.
Yeah.
But you got to agree that they admitted, okay, this one's on us. I mean, we didn't do a good job of controlling, not the message, but the truth. We allowed people to come on our network and say things we knew were dishonest.
Yep, for ratings.
There will always be people on networks say things that are dishonest. But to me, as an executive or a producer or somebody who has control, when you know they're being dishonest, you can't allow them to keep on and perpetrating the same lie and peddle the same fantasy. So at what point in time do we investigate CNBC for allowing the Pfizer CEO to come on time and time again and talk about how effective the vaccine is, how many lives it's saving, how we should all be proud of the fast tracking of the medicine, Operation Warp Speed comes to mind. I just think, there's no doubt that Fox is the loser. I think Trump is another loser. I think Tucker wins and loses. I think Ingram wins and loses. The biggest win for Tucker is he doesn't have to get on a witness stand. I mean, to me, that's the biggest win. That might be the biggest win for Fox, that their biggest personalities, not their biggest journalists. Who's the biggest journalist at Fox?
Bret Baier.
Okay,
probably.
Bret Baier. I mean, I would agree to that. I mean, Bret Baier might be the only journalist at Fox. Well, Himmer, I think, would probably be a journalist. Yeah. Perino's not a journalist. She's former press secretary. And, I mean, they got an abundance of ladies who go to the gym 5 days a week and read teleprompters. I mean, that's kind of Roger Ailes was a conservative warrior. Roger Ailes had he had the bona fides of conservative warrior. Murdoch's a business guy. I mean, Murdoch knows the average consumer of news is a 50-year-old white male, so he puts a lot of 28, 29, 30-year-old fit female. That's not rocket science. I mean, nobody would deny that. Even the most ardent, a Fox supporter or consumer would say, yeah, I mean, that's pretty much the strategy of Murdoch. And I think Fox has struggled since Ailes passed away. Because I think Ailes I think he understood conservatism. He had a political background. But in closing, I'm not going to defend Fox. I mean, to some degree, I'm a conservative pundit. I'm a conservative opinion monster. I believe in limited government. I like what Fox has to say a lot better than I do what MSNBC has to say, what CNN has to say, what CBS, ABC, NBC, New York Times, Washington Post, everybody but Fox Talk Radio, the Wall Street Journal. I mean, there's a conservative media outlet, but they're a little bit, they're not as mainstream as talk radio, as Fox News, and the Wall Street Journal. I mean, those would be the three non-liberal conservative outlets that you and I would consider somewhat mainstream. And talk radio is becoming more and more and more mainstream. The podcasting is different. With the early days of, how much influence and effectiveness can a podcast attain or amass or drive an audience one direction or another. But I got to believe there's somebody out there right now saying, okay, I mean, Fox did wrong. There's no doubt about it. Fox knowingly and willingly allowed someone to come on and say things that were fundamentally dishonest on behalf of an aggrieved president. President's got about half the country that likes him. The other half doesn't much care for him. But Fox News has paid a pretty significant price for that happening. will anything happen to the other news outlets who have allowed, and I'm just using the vaccine as an example. I mean, there will be a multitude of other situations or occasions that things like that come up. This is there's always been, kind of a high standard, high threshold for defamation cases when it involves public figures. Giuliani be a public figure. Would Sidney Powell be a public figure? No, but that would be borderline.
In this instance, though.
In this instance, she's the president's lawyer. Yeah. She would be a public figure in that regard. But we know today, we know this to be true, that there is data to support this. The vaccine was not as effective as they told us it was in the early days of the pandemic. They can plead ignorant. They can say they didn't know any better. That they can say, we were trying to keep people. I get there. There's a multitude of excuses that they can use. Some will carry water. Some will not. Some will be easy to defend. Some will not. But now that we've got this precedent, and it's the largest defamation settlement in the history of American media, I predict, because we live in this turnaround as fair play world. We live in a world where, if you come after one of our guys, we'll come after one of yours. Jim Jordan just had a investigatory committee meeting in Manhattan, New York. Why? To combat what Bragg is trying to do regarding the arrest or the indictment and eventual arrest of President Trump. So I'm giving fair warning that I believe in the next little while, I don't want to pin myself down to a time period here. I believe in the next little while that there will be some case. Maybe it proceeds to the courts. Maybe it doesn't. There'll be some judge shopping, some court shopping. That they'll find a friendly venue. But I predict that the COVID vaccine and whether or not somebody intentionally misled, it's one thing to mislead. It's another to intentionally mislead. So if the CEO of Pfizer comes on CNBC and says, we have made tremendous strides and breakthroughs, and this vaccine will stop you from getting COVID. We know that's dishonest. Did he know? Did he know that was dishonest? Did CNBC know when the CEO of Pfizer came on and said the vaccine stops you from getting COVID? Because if he didn't know and they didn't know, that's one thing, right? It's his opinion that the vaccine stops you from getting COVID. But that's not true. But that was his opinion at that moment in time. The CNBC host allowed him to say that. The CNBC executives allowed him to say that. But was there ever a moment at CNBC, and that's a hypothetical, I'm not accusing them of anything, but was there ever a moment at CNBC that they knew as a network the vaccine was not anywhere near as effective, and the CEO of Pfizer knew it was not anywhere near as effective, but BlackRock needed to get paid, Goldman needed to get paid, the Pfizer shareholders needed to get paid, and they needed everybody in America to take that shot. That's kind of what I'm interested in. I'm not defending Fox. I'm not deflecting from Fox. I am a conservative Republican. I don't deny that. I don't shy away from that. I will continue to watch Fox. I don't watch it a lot for news. I've told you before, if there's a plane crash, I don't turn it to Fox. If there's if a building falls to the ground, I want to see the news report, the news account. I don't turn it to Fox. It's pretty hard to turn it anywhere now, to be honest with you. It's kind of interesting because we do some of this. We do a morning radio show and a podcast twice a week, and people say, hey, where do you get your news? I don't know. I get opinions from everybody. I get punditry from everywhere. The hard news, it's hard to find. It really and truly is. But the next chapter of this case, of this era in political journalism, or the lack of political journalism, and political punditry has replaced political journalism, and it generates a lot of revenue. And to some degree, we're guilty of that. And we benefit from that reality. But if CNBC allowed the Pfizer CEO to come on the air and say the shot works, knowing that the shot didn't work, or at least the characterization of the shot. The shot does work to some degree, right? But we know it doesn't stop you from getting COVID. It doesn't stop the transmission from getting COVID. It probably does. I don't say it probably does. It does, I'm sure, benefit those at high-risk categories. But if you're a young, healthy 25-year-old there was never any reason for you to get a shot. But if you're a young, healthy 25-year-old in the American military, it was demanded of you, unless you had some weird exemption, and that person may have standing, and there's enough lawyers in America. We live in the most litigious society in the world. There's enough lawyers in America to plunder around in the archives of CNBC or MSNBC, and we live in this, hey, you hit me with a stick, I'm going to hit you back with a, that's probably, Trump probably ushered that in a more accelerated way. But once again, we did a podcast Tuesday about Dominion and Fox, did a very different one today, and the reason it's so much different is Fox and Dominion agreed to not go to trial. And if your company's worth $75 million and somebody offers you $787.5 million, where do I sign? And how quick do I sign? And you can make that check out to whomever you decide. Thanks for joining us. Still want to thank our sponsors once again. They're good sponsors: Micky Finn's, Marlboro MPD Electric, Schofield's, Carolina Bank, Pepsi of Florence. We've tried to do the best we can at some of the backdrop. You see the rolling. What do you call this? I mean, this is signage. I know what it is.
Well, we want to put our sponsor logos up there so there's a visual for folks that are watching on YouTube, for example.
And it's very well done. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again next week.